gonna say it's your boy.
What's up, St. Mark's? It is David Woodford. I'm the Communications Director and Youth Pastor here at St. Mark's UMC. And every Friday, we do a devotional on Christian verbs. These are verbs that we want to live out in our Christian life. Practical, applicable, and they're words that should be part of your daily vocabulary as a Christian. Maybe not daily all the time, but what we've got today is, I think, a paradoxical verb. This is a verb that is a verb, grammatically speaking, but it's almost the opposite of that. And it's something that Christians often neglect to do. And it's something that I want to emphasize this Friday for you. All right, so what is something that God has commanded us to do, both in Jewish times, Old Testament times, and in New Testament times? What is something He's commanded us to do? What is something that if we don't do, we die? And furthermore, what is something that Americans are chronically unable to do? All right, you've probably guessed it by now, but it is rest. Rest is something that God has commanded us to do, both spiritually and physically. And it's also something that Americans are chronically unable to do. If you look at statistics as to the amount of hours worked in America versus other, like, say, Western European countries, we work substantially more. America is filled with workaholics. And I honestly can tell you that I feel that tendency to never stop. Because sometimes when you pour your problems into your work, you can forget your problems. Also, when you spiritually are wrestling with something, maybe it's something personal, maybe it's something broader and more existential, we struggle and we never give ourselves a chance to rest. Now, that's a lot of talk, but I want to read some scripture from the Bible. So first off, we're going to look at Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 through 30, and this is in the ESV. I like the ESV a lot. It's one of my favorite translations. And it says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Now, that verse in particular, when Jesus refers to a yoke, He is talking about, of course, what they would put over cows. And some of you know that if you're familiar with, like, the way that ancient agrarian societies worked, even up until, like, early American history. A yoke was something that you put around a farm animal, typically a bull, and you would plow a field, right? But what does Jesus mean by it? Well, a yoke at the time was a fairly common way to talk about a set of teachings or a doctrine. He was saying that my doctrine, or my personal / God's personal philosophy for your life, is easier than what the world or what the spiritual leaders of that time emphasized. So they're saying, Jesus is saying that His way is easier and you will find rest in His way. Now let's look at another scripture that I think is super important, and this one is one that a lot of you may have thought of first, and it's one that I thought of, so you don't get any points. That's a joke. So let's read Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 through 3, and this is one a lot of you I know are thinking. It says, "And on the seventh day, God finished His work that He had done, and He rested on the seventh day from His work." Now, one of the things I want to emphasize, so this verse, God has just finished creating the world, the plants, the animals, the universe, the stars, everything. He's just finished creating existence. And He rests. Now, did He rest because the physical exertion of creating all of this matter was so much that He was just tired? I think that if we say that, we're putting limitations on God. We're saying God can only handle one universe in a week, or else He gets sleepy. That's not what really is going on here. God didn't get sleepy because He was busy creating the universe and it just really tuckered Him out. God is setting an example for us. He's saying, hey, after a long week, you deserve to rest. And that's what I'm getting at. God has put it out there for us in the Old Testament. Jesus has put it out there, and they are reminding us that we should not neglect to rest and recharge in the Spirit and in prayer. That we need to rest, because otherwise we will die. There's a great anecdote regarding early settlers who were moving to California, and some of you may have heard this, but it's almost a scientific sort of conversation about the nature of the human body and of stress and of rest. And it goes like this, and a lot of people talk about this when talking about the Sabbath and the efficacy of having a holy day. These settlers are traveling to California, and the fundamental Christians and some of the Jewish caravans and all this different stuff, they would always rest on the Sabbath. And this was unique because some of the more secular people who were going, the miners and that kind of thing, people who were, they were all in it for money, but the people who were in it just explicitly for money, and they had absolutely no religious connection whatsoever, they would not rest. And their cattle would die, their horses would die, their livestock would die, and they, on occasion, would meet their end much sooner and at much higher rates than the Christians and the Jewish people who were traveling to California. And the reason I bring this up is because there is a scientific reason that you need to rest. And it's because without rest, you will collapse. And then you won't be able to do the work of the kingdom. And that's what we're about. We're about doing the work of the kingdom. And if you do not have the strength to do the work of the kingdom, well then, you ain't doing the work of the kingdom, are you? So, getting back to the paradoxical nature of this verb, when we think of verbs, we often think of things that you do, all right? That's what this whole series has been about. Love, grieve, these are things that we do. Rest is almost the opposite of that. It is defined as being a reprieve from physical activity. So, it can come off as paradoxical when I say this is a verb, but obviously you know that to rest requires you to do something. So, my encouragement to you through this lesson is that you would find the thing that recharges you, spiritually, physically, mentally, and that you would go after that thing once a week, and that you would find rest, and that you would pray and meditate, and that you would be able to further do the work of the kingdom. Thank you for joining us for another Friday devotional, and I'll see you next week.